Hello everyone. Captain Happy back after an extended break, which unfortunately the frequency of my uploads is going to continue to be rather sporadic. Two kids, two jobs, very busy, and as much as I enjoy making videos, I find myself with a pretty severe lack of time the last few months, but hopefully that'll change. Today I am covering the new German destroyer line, and in this video I'm covering the Elbing, which is the Tier 10. Uh, as you may have guessed, or seen, or heard, I'm by no means covering this line or this ship before anyone else. They are more cruisers than destroyers, but I've enjoyed them very much so far to this point. And so quickly, I'm just not going to go into depth about my build. I think it's relatively self-explanatory, easy to kind of figure out what build. I won't even go so far as to say is the best build. Just I think kind of standard considering what this ship offers. You do have some options. There are definitely different directions you can go. I am looking at obviously some of the modules here. Propulsion is just as relevant. Not so much the damage control mod 2. I'm not set on fire that often. I like to be able to juke, although there is some throttle juking as well. This one, concealment, is basically, it's a no-brainer, can get you to 6.5. This last one you do have some options. I prefer reload, as I find myself getting into more close quarters fights with other destroyers than using it to farm other larger ships at range, so I go with the reload on that. You can see here at 6.2 reload time, you're not going to be best in class in most things with this ship relative to other destroyers, other than one big standout example, which is your HP on these ships is kind of disgusting. And it solidifies the concept that more than a lot of other destroyers in this game, you are more of a cruiser than a DD. But here's my captain build. The turret traverse is a little slow, but the first 10 points are going to be basically standard for all destroyers. And then I like radio location because your detection is a little bit further out than a lot of other DDs, so it gives you a heads up on where they could be. However, this one's superintendent. I've waited on that one. I find myself very, very, very often really wishing I had that fourth smoke. So that's going to be 3 of my last 4 points, and then my final point I'll probably do incoming fire alert, just to give me a heads up if someone's shooting at me at longer range. So that, again, as you saw, that's pretty much standard basic stuff for a destroyer. There is one other thing here. You got 25 millimeters of side plating, which combined with your borderline outrageous amount of hit points, that helps mitigate a bunch of damage from other DDs too if you can keep yourself angled. Like I said, I wanted to make that quick. Let's get into the game. So, starting off, Nad, first of all, I'll throw a disclaimer up. I'm not sure what happened with the replay system. There are a bunch of kind of default changes in it that there's a lot of what you're seeing on the screen now. That's not what I see on my screen in-game. Good example here, the binocular things around the edge of the screen, I don't have that on in-game, but apparently in replays it's automatic. The other one that is a little bit annoying to me with regards to a replay thing is I have the ship type and the player name and hit points and all that stuff on the ships as you see them on the screen, and in this replay they just come up as showing you the class. So that's a little bit annoying, and I'll do my best, but in all likelihood I'll probably misidentify a ship or two here or there because of that. But getting into the game, so while you are not a destroyer, and other than in name, you're more of a cruiser. However, you do have pretty good concealment, and certainly you have really good concealment for a cruiser. So, in general, though I'm much more gun shy about getting into caps early, there are different situations on different maps and different matchmaking and stuff like that where I feel like I can get away with doing certain things that destroyers typically do. And yes, there is a risk, but it's not substantial enough to keep me completely away. And that being said, if I was in a cruiser with 6.5 concealment, I'd probably go for a cap too here and there. But anyway, so I try to set up in a position. Typically on this map, destroyers will go to the large island there on the edge of B, between A and B, and kind of set up to try and get into the cap. So I throw torps on either side of the smaller island on the north side of the cap. The second set obviously headed for that position, and it's at this point I notice an Ohio kind of pushing up. And since I've been keeping an eye on, I think the enemy team has 4 radars in this game. And so far, we got the Riga and the Salem are way off at A cap, so I don't have to worry about them. The Cleveland, I gotta keep my eye out. So either way, I feel relatively safe to smoke up here, keep contesting the cap, and get some early damage in on this Ohio. And I mean, you can see 3 salvos nets me 14k damage, and I get a lucky torp hit on the Cleveland, the thing I was worried about. So really, this whole line, despite a lot of the talk you heard when it was first released, yeah, the DPM on paper isn't great, but it is all about the guns. The amount of damage you can do is borderline silly, and though I haven't landed any big salvos yet on this Cleveland, standard 5k salvos on battleships and cruisers with these guns. It's fantastic. And even on destroyers, you'll see in a little bit, there's the Haru, who was in the spot as I predicted. Even with just the AP, I get some shocking salvos on this Haragumo a little bit later in the match. However, at this point, the Cleveland is pushing into the cap, and he's getting himself into radar range. And getting the cap isn't worth the potential damage I might take. So I leave it. At this point, I notice the Alsace pushing south. And these torps, I'll just really quick, there's not much to say about them. They are super slow at 55 knots. But they reload relatively quickly. You've got 13.5 kilometer range, which is fantastic. They are very much sling them when they're reloaded. Just throw them in different directions. You never know what can happen. And as you saw earlier with the Cleveland, I obviously wasn't firing my torpedoes at the Cleveland, but you know, if you get them out there, you have a good chance of doing some damage, and they do hurt. I think they're upwards of 19k damage for each torp, so that's relevant. But in general, like, it's tough to rely on them unless you're at point blank range, which in this ship is not always easy to get into that position. You're usually trying to keep some distance between yourself and the enemy. And as you can see on the minimap now, not only is there... I got one on the Alsace, I'll take it. The Cleveland, the Haru, and the Cossack are all in the vicinity of B. So I want to hang around. I'm really hoping here that the Cleveland kind of pops out and gives me a chance to finish him. That doesn't happen. The Haru, I believe it's the Haru, yes. He pushes a little forward, and now, but just watch some of these. 7k with the AP. And I get another couple, and immediately with all the incoming fire I smoke up. I have great HP and decent tankability, but 3 targets shooting at you, that's a little too much. Well, you can see. It's a 3K, so not great. But the point is, there is almost never uh, a real rationalization for switching to HE. The HE is terrible, and the DPM is terrible, and the only situation I found myself in where it's valid to use the HE is against destroyers who are smart enough to not give you big juicy targets to shoot at with your HE. Boom! There goes the Cleveland. Fantastic. And I get another crack at Mr. Haru here. Now at this point, and at these ranges, I feel a little bit more comfortable firing in the open. Not only is the Cleveland gone, like a 7K. So you can see, like, the AP is no joke, even against destroyers. And here we go with a JB? Bloop. JB approved on that one. I landed the torp, but that was definitely not my kill to be had, but every little bit helps our team. Now, on that note, you can see in this battle, I'm doing fairly well for myself, 75k, and not even halfway into the battle, a couple of kills, but map control is not something our team has right now. We're down on points, we're down on ships. Again, I usually have ship lists at the side. It makes it easier for me to do commentary like this. But I know I think we're down by either 1 or 2 ships right now. So things aren't looking great. And off in ACAP, there is an Alaska, a Salem, a Riga, and a Monarch. Now there's no DD. And initially here, I see our gearing taking B. It's not contested, so the Cossack moved off. So I kind of, as our team's 3rd destroyer, I move in the general direction of A, but that's an awful lot of radar ships that need to have something happen to them to make A safe for me. I'm not particularly healthy, although with my health bar, I'm at 10k HP. My health bar looks bad, but I have about half of what a lot of other destroyers at tier 9 and 10 have when they're at a relatively similar level with the HP bar. But the Alaska goes down, thank you Montana, and the Montana, Balti, and the gearing all look like they're kind of closing in and trying to get B out in the east. We've got the Oland contesting for C, and all the enemy there has is a cruiser and an Ohio, so that looks like we're okay-ish on that flank. Salem. He's another big concern, but the Riga and the Monarch here are pushing south, chasing down our line. And despite what I said earlier about throwing the torps, I mean, I probably should have here, just because, but it's hard for me to really tell, like, depending on how long our Lion lives, the Riga and the Monarch might just continue south there, and that makes torp hits incredibly unlikely. So I'm trying to get into a position where I'm hovering at the edge of the range of the Riga's radar, but I want to get a little bit closer and see if they commit to a direction and I can throw torps. However, noticing on the minimap that the Salem has started to move towards B, and if we can get the Riga, then I will dive right into A. I'll have island cover from the Salem. Unfortunately, the Monty's trying to help, but he's not going down quick enough. And over at C, we lose our Olin, which is less than ideal. So at this point, I'm thinking, okay, gotta make a play for A. The Salem's getting close to radar range, but I wanted to dump my torps. You can see the Riga kind of turned in, so I figured there's a decent possibility that his course will take him around the island where I threw the torps, and you never know. However, I'm not over anxious to go running in. There goes our Lion. So now the Monarch and the Riga are definitely going to be turning towards me. And looking at the range, so that's the Riga radar. And I get myself into a position here where I'm radared by the Riga, and I think the Monarch and the Riga both take some shots at me. I don't remember exactly, but you can see in chat, One of my teammates is saying, take A, it's open. No, it's not. Once we get to the 30-second mark, and it keeps going past it, I know that the Salem and the Riga overlap their radars. So I am now going to be radared for quite some time. So the point is, and you look at the course that the Monarch and the Riga took, no, A is not open at all. And with my HP, I wouldn't last. So kind of hanging in the middle and trying to wait out the radars was definitely the right call. Here, so now the radars are down, and yet at the same time, like, I waited for the Riga to fire to give myself a little bit of extra time. My aim could have been better, but I feel like at this point, killing the Riga will absolutely open up A, even with the Salem right there. And boom, there we go. I think that probably qualifies as another JB approved. But yeah, here comes the Salem, and this is the point in the match where I take an absolute risk to try it and kill him. I know our gearing's about to die, so I get to an angle where I can shoot the Salem, hoping that the gearing would stay alive a little bit longer. It's right there. It was a huge risk. I wasn't concealed in my smoke yet. Whoo, yeah, 200 HP. This is fine. Everything's fine. But you can see right there, again, a nice element of these guns. I break one of his front turrets, which helps immensely as far as him trying to blind fire me, because all he has to do is sneeze correctly in my direction, and he'll get me. But I decide it is worth the risk. I know he doesn't have a radar, at least not for another minute or maybe less. But I want to get the damage I can, and what I do try to do here, you can get damage, but I am aiming for his guns. And I broke one, you can tell kind of there. I don't think it's permanently broken, but it is. He's not repairing it yet. So at this point, now that he goes dark, I decide to lob a set of torps in his direction. Again, another potentially very costly mistake on my part. I should have exited my smoke a little bit slower. However, he was radaring anyway. So even if I had managed to keep myself concealed, it wouldn't have made a difference. Break his gun again. And I actually think that was the second. I think he was both of his front turrets were broken. And we smack down the Salem with 205 HP left. That felt pretty good. That's the fourth kill. Now, all of a sudden, our team went from being down to being in a very strong position with only the enemy Monarch left. We're about to take C. The Drake is moving north. The Buffalo probably won't be a part of this. But the Monty is healthy enough that in my mind he could probably just take the Monarch 1v1. But at this point, everything is coming up rosy, and I make my move for A. And this is one thing. Do I have to? No, I don't. But even looking at the scores, like, unlikely though it is that the Monarch isn't going to survive this 4v1, it's always good to take objectives if you can and just overkill. Extra guarantee the win. And that's exactly what I'm doing. There's no threats. There's no chance he's going to spot me. And so I am heading in that direction, and we get some activity in chat. Someone claiming the Salem didn't know how to play. Perhaps that's true. But I responded, and I think it's fair to say it's hard to respond in a ship when you don't have any guns that can shoot. And I was doing it with intent to try and break his guns, and thankfully the penetration on these guns, the AP, is strong enough that I was able to do it relatively consistently. The other thing I'll say really quick, because obviously there's a bit of a break in the action, as it were. So unlike the Schultz, the turret setup on the Elbing is set up kind of similar to like some of the German cruisers, the Rune, and some of them where they have a very similar setup with two turrets on the back end of the ship and only one facing forward, which caters to kiting. And that is definitely something that this ship can do well. This game wasn't a great example of doing any of that, but as opposed to the Schultz, if you turn hard in, you get the middle turret and the front turret able to swivel side to side if you're front facing. However, when you're being chased by a destroyer or something like that, that makes the slow turret traverse and everything a little bit cumbersome. And I enjoy this setup much more, where you can keep guns on target even while you're running. Take a little cheap shot there as I go behind the island. What you can see me doing here is specifically I want to ensure I get the cap, and I'm also waiting for the lion to fire his guns. So I know that that's going to buy me 25-ish seconds to get extra damage and get the cap. And full disclosure, at this point, I am glued for Kraken. Despite it not giving you any flags anymore, I'll rant about that in another video. But he gets his reload off. At this point, I find it worth it. Yep, he gets me, but bloop. My last salvo gets him for the Kraken and the win. And so this game, it was only my fourth game in the Elbing, and so far I am enjoying it. Just throw up a couple stats here and say that I'm glad to be back and making videos again periodically. We'll leave you here with a little bit of artwork that I've done for my clan. And thank you for those of you who watch. I will catch you next time.